this. All right, and we're good to go, I think. All right, so how are we doing today, folks? It is Barrett from Next Evolution Athletics, and this is another segment, I think it's segment 3 or 4, of our Q&A with another professional. So I have with us today Dr. Brad Kane, and Brad, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hey everyone, Barrett, first off, thanks for having me. This is kind of fun being on the internet. So I'm here in the little home gym here, which is like my little hideaway space during COVID. So my name's Brad. I'm a practicing chiropractor here in town. I've been in practice for just about 18 years, and also the president of the Alberta College Association of Chiropractors. I'm a coach at Trek Fit Lab, Crossfit gym, powerlifting gym here in Northwest Calgary. And just an active member of the fitness community and a big fan of people being fit.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Brad and I have been working together for almost 3 years now.
Yeah.
We've been coaching together, and then he's also been adjusting me like a madman, trying to keep me from being a crippled train wreck. Well, I'm just a simple question, like, why chiropractic, man? What made you get into chiropractic?
It was actually, I was on my way into medical school, to be honest with you, again, 18 years ago. And I was playing hockey and I got cross-checked from behind and had basically a whiplash injury. My mom took me to see a chiropractor, and it made a huge effect. It actually sped my recovery along quite quickly. And I was like, this seems like it's something that could be pretty good. And then as I was going through the application process for medical school, I was unsuccessful my first time around. So during that year in between application, I was like, I need to do something. So I thought I'd give chiro school a try. So I applied and was able to get in. And after that first year, I didn't want to go anywhere else. I was enjoying it so much.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a great profession. It's fun. Like I meet great people, people like yourself, and I don't work with sick people. I work with people that want to be healthier and they want to move better. So I appreciate that about my work, is that the complaints that I get are stuff that I can be hands-on and help them work through.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to have that mindset, the difference in mindset from, like, say, the workers' comp, where it's like, oh, I'm just trying to, get through this, versus fix this. I need to get back to doing what I want to do.
Yeah. We often say, like, the only panacea in medicine is exercise, and a panacea is, basically a cure-all. It's the only thing that's good for everything.
Yeah.
And so our function is, myself as a movement specialist, as a functional expert, is basically get people moving better, more symmetrically, so they can get healthier and lead better lives. It's no more complex than that.
My grandmother said something so profound, like probably 10 years ago now. And we were talking about, like, me being a trainer and all this stuff. And she didn't quite get it because, it's just not their world. And then we ended up talking, and she said something so simple and profound. She goes, "Stop moving, start dying." And I was like, wow.
Have you ever heard of the Grim Reaper study?
No, I haven't.
Study done a number of years ago, but they basically tried to determine what the minimum rate of speed someone had to walk with that they could outrun the Grim Reapers. They looked at mortality rates based upon a person's ability to walk, to move. And I don't remember what the specific number was, but they actually came up with a minimum speed that you would have to be able to walk at to have a 5-year life expectancy rate.
Wow. Do you remember what the speed was, just out of curiosity?
I want to say it was like 0.7 miles per hour. Like, it wasn't smoking fast.
No, that's just a walk.
It's still moving.
Wow.
And it's so key for people. Survivability requires motion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you look at something like macro, like the ability to walk, but even somebody just to reach overhead, there's a functional limitation. It's not related to your question, but one of the common things that I see in the office, people come in and they're like, well, my doctor said I shouldn't squat because of my knee pain. And I simply tell them, like, so how are we going to get off the toilet then? And they kind of look at me like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, that is a squat, and that needs to be done.
Yeah.
So therefore, I don't agree that you should not squat.
Yeah. Find a way to squat better, or more efficient.
Find a way to squat better. Yeah, exactly.
I've dealt with that. The same thing with doctors. I've had the whole conversation like, well, you should never deadlift. And I'm like, well, how do you pick anything up off the floor?
Right.
Like, what do you mean? It's like a pen falls on the floor. You're just going to leave it there and wait for. I actually had a doctor once when I hurt my back, years ago when I was like 27. When I said, oh man, how did it was so strange. We got into this huge debate on, like, she goes, well, it looks like you probably have a grade 1 disc herniation. And I was like, okay, well, what are my limitations? She goes, well, you can't rotate, you can't put anything overhead, you can't run, you can't jump, you can't squat, you can't deadlift, you can't pick up anything. It's like, so I just die at 27. I'm just done. Like, that's it. So we went back and forth, and I was depressed for a week, which is really messed up. Like, and this is my field. Like, how the heck do I teach anyone how to deadlift if I literally can't do it anymore? And I just said, this is stupid. I rehab this stuff all the time. So I started doing it. Now I lift and move better than I ever have before. And I have like almost no back pain.
Sure.
But it's like profoundly simple. Like, just do it better. Find a way to become better at the movement.
Yeah, and the trick is not to lose it in the first place. Like, people will have injuries that they have to modify for. But you look at even the recommendation 25 years ago for people with back pain was to take 2 weeks bed rest.
Which
And
is like the worst thing.
oh yeah, it made people so much worse because now you've more or less recovered from the injury per se because your body's patched it up. But now you've lost all of your strength, you've lost your mobility, and all of those things are so much harder to rehab. And
Absolutely.
so you look at a hip replacement or a knee replacement surgery now, they'll have you walking that day
Yeah.
because the ability to emulate is so important, and you're laying down those neurologic patterns very early in that recovery process.
Yeah.
And so it's so much easier to maintain it than it is to try and regain it.
Yeah. I've worked with, I think, 4 total hip replacements and 1 double hip replacement. And all of them have gone into their doctor at the 6-week kind of mark, and they've all walked in, no walker, no cane, anything. And the doctor said, how many weeks post are we? Like 12, 14, like 6. And they're like, where's everything? I'm like, never used it.
Yeah.
Girl with a double hip replacement literally walked in and looked at her doctor and was like, I'm fine. He's like, no, you've had 2 hip replacements. You shouldn't be fine. And she jumped up and down. She goes, I'm good.
Yeah, it's cool stories like that. I mean,
Yeah. But we did prehab. Like, we worked every client I worked with that we worked so hard going into it because I said, once we have the date, we can't do any more damage. If it's damaged, they're just going to go in and fix it anyway. So we push as hard as we can and go in there, and you move as soon as you can.
yeah, and one of the things that people don't understand too is that musculoskeletal rehab is an area of very significant and evolving research. Like, they're learning more about it, and people sort of assume that it's a very static topic. Like, oh, this is how you recover from
Step one.
a back pain or shoulder injury or whatever. But it's not. It varies, but from individual to individual, their own anatomy and biomechanics, but also to their expectations for recovery, nutrition, you name the component, it's all part of it. And the research is developing so quickly, and the standards, you look at even to the debate between heat and ice on a sprained ankle.
I know.
That one swings back and forth like a pendulum.
And it pops up about every 18 months.
Yeah.
About
and you'd
that.
be surprised at how angry people get having that debate. Professionals.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't.
They're bad.
Yeah,
it depends on your application.
Absolutely, like most things. Yeah, it's this is actually a good way to lead into the next one. Like, so what makes your practice unique? What do you feel makes you guys unique, and what do you specialize in? Because where are you located?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, like, I'm a functional movement expert basically. So people have 2 sides. They have a right and a left side, so they can do things symmetrically or unilaterally as needed. So the difference in our practice is that I run a large multidisciplinary practice. So we have chiropractors in there with osseous manipulation training, but also soft tissue management. We have massage therapists, we have athletic therapists, we have acupuncturists, we've had nutritionists in past. We're looking at physiotherapists. So what we believe is that health conditions, even musculoskeletal based health conditions, are multivariate. Like, there's little components from the form an injury. It's not just the thing that hurts.
Yeah.
So what I find is that my expertise is vastly augmented by other expertise. So using a team-based approach to looking at someone's functional limitations and seeing what else we might be able to do for them, or how else we might be able to refine the way they work, that's just beneficial for the patient. The advice and the programs that we come up with are unique and specific to that patient's specific history. So we don't have like, this is program A and this is program B and this is program C. What we do is create something that's highly unique, and it's outcome based. It's like, what, when I sit with patients across knee to knee before we start, I was like, okay, I need to ask you what your goals are. Like, why are you looking to hire us, and what's going to make this a successful experience for you? And if we can meet those expectations through a program, then that's great. But if we can't, then we move them on to someplace else. But it's really based upon making sure they get what they need.
Yeah, and that's awesome. This is the Calgary Center for Health. Anyone that might be curious about it, because
Yeah.
it's definitely a great spot. It's right downtown. Even I go down there, so that's a big deal.
That's a nice option.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've been there several times, and I can't say enough about the place. So I really appreciate what you guys do. It's really it's definitely a unique type of chiropractic practice.
And if you're a marketing coach, you probably don't like the name of our center because it's the Calgary Center for Health.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty broad. And there's a saying in marketing that if you try to appeal to everyone, you're going to appeal to no one.
Yeah. But we actually do appeal to everyone.
But I think it's worked because of that personal approach. And we've been in there for over 20 years. So we've taken a long time to build the business up. And it's been successful. We get good outcomes with people, and we're well known across the province for being good at what we do. So at this point, it kind of builds itself, which is great.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what is your training, coaching, and healthcare philosophies like? What would you think? Are they all very similar, or they have a wide variety in each, or what do you got in your head?
Well, that's a good question. I think they're all similar because they're all kind of similar aspirations.
Yeah.
When I get in front of a class and coach, my primary goal is, if someone's gonna do an Olympic movement like a clean squat clean, let's just take that for example, you have to understand why that movement occurs and what's important about that movement, so that then when they're going through the positions, they understand why those positions are important. And then also how to self-correct, because when I've got a new athlete, when I'm coaching a new athlete to Olympic lifting, if they pattern poorly at the start, they'll run back to those patterns as the weight load increases, and therefore your injury potential increases as well. So primary goal is for an athlete to understand what they're doing, and then be able to some degree self-analyze and self-correct. So that's on the coaching side. On the training side, probably a bit different in the sense that it has to be dynamic and has to be fun. Mm-hmm. So, if you're out there training and you're doing a chest day, and, we've talked about this, you and I have talked about this before, but before I found places like Trek, I hated the gym, man. I couldn't. The thought of doing a chest day to me is so repulsive. It's so boring. And it feels like a job.
Back in the day, glory days.
Oh, yeah. Like today's chest and back day, and you never want to do legs.
So I did love legs, so I was a weird one.
I did too. I mean, we all did. But I think that training should be dynamic. It should be fun, and you should enjoy what you're doing and the people you do it with. Yeah. And then when I get into my clinical world, when I'm practicing chiropractic, it's the same thing. Is that I've had strength in past of building relationships with people that go beyond just a service. And so I try and connect with them, and for oftentimes, and you're the same way, is that you hang out with your clients more often than you do your friends at times. And so you do build relationships with those people. Yeah. And those are really important for clinical outcome as well. Because one of the things that we have to do, we have to build two things with our clientele. And we have to build hope, and we have to build trust. And two of those are very important pillars, neither of which are directly related to chiropractic care, but they're the outcome for that patient is hinged upon those two things. Okay. So my goal is to build those relationships and to establish a trust. And then we get into outcome-based assessment and treatment, and we hit the mark with a vast majority of our cases.
Yeah, it's amazing what the trust and what the mindset can do for the individual.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if you're dealing with an individual that's like well, if I coach people and the athlete doesn't buy into the program, no matter how good the program is, if the athlete doesn't buy into it, then it ain't gonna work.
Well, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Just
And
that.
then that's, you know, all of the touch-based professions, well, any profession really, yours included, is we rely upon placebo effect. And we shouldn't actually think of that as being a negative. Like that's the most powerful force in medicine, in healthcare, is placebo. And that placebo is about trust. Do you think it's working? Then guess what? It's working.
Absolutely. Like I work with a lot of athletes. I actually had a question to me the other day, and someone asked me like, "What's the most important? What do you feel is the most important aspect of working with an athlete and and the success outcome?" I was like, "Their openness, their ability to understand, to be open-minded, and their mindset approaching that."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you have an athlete that comes in, this is the only way I know how to train. This is the only thing that gets results. No matter if I deviate outside of that, their world collapses a lot of the time.
Right. Right.
So if I stay within the realm, we're good. But I may know that in order for them to improve, they have to go over here. But to get them to go over there may or may not happen depending on if they're willing to do it or not. So that open mindedness and that ability to like accept the change is probably maybe what you need to get further. Like it's really
Yeah, that change can be uncomfortable too, but that's adaptability. And
yeah.
so, you know, the old saying, like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Yeah.
So in my past, I've worked with a ton of runners, and running, in my opinion, is the only sport in the world with a 100% injury rate. But
Yeah.
it's pretty accessible and people enjoy doing it, which is awesome. But the problem is I get people in my office that, you know, they want to run a 4-hour marathon. So they try and hold that pace every single run they do, whether it be 2K, 5K, or 15K. And they don't understand why they can't get better. You got to get outside your comfort zone. So they say that's where the magic happens.
Yeah. I always find it interesting working with runners because it either goes one of two directions. Because I literally always end up seeing them for my knees are shot, my back is killing me, my shoulders are like something is busted on them or any combination there. And it's usually knees and or back and or shoulders. So I usually end up saying, okay, well, what's your main goal? I go, well, I want to run faster. Okay, so what are you doing? Well, I'm running more. I'm like, well, you need to run faster to run faster. I'm like, yeah, I'm running more. I'm like, no, you need to run faster to run faster.
Right.
So I usually end up, if they do this, a lot of them, the ones that have been successful, I get them to back off their running, and I spend 6 weeks usually building up their hips and their hamstrings and working on imbalances, and then just getting them to get into a sprint pattern after like maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And then I'll make them do hill running or something like that. And then usually by about week 8, I let them go back into running, and they always run faster, and their times just plummet.
Yeah.
Usually it's due to recovery from all the volume of running they were doing, but it's also like fixing those injuries that allow you to run faster.
Yeah, you know, I do a lot of like public speaking, and one of the things that I talk about is biomechanics. And just by virtue of a lot of runners, I've spoken to a lot of those groups, and I always say to them, like, listen, the problem with runners is that you're runners, and you spend all of your time in a high impact open chain catabolic exercise, which means like a catabolic exercise burns tissue, fat tissue, whatever. But the problem is that your muscles break down over the period of time that you're not doing something anabolic, which is muscle building.
Yeah.
So first thing I do with my 5K or my 10K groups is I get them to take a day off running and get into the gym and actually start lifting weights and building lean muscle mass, because your metabolism is going to increase, your strength and your ambulation is going to increase. So therefore you are going to go faster because you are therefore stronger and not wasting away. And, you know, also too, we talk about one of the trick questions I ask. I'm going to give away my punchline here, but I ask, so what is the most important shock absorber in the body? And so I asked this question, and so the group, all the hands go up and be like, oh, it's the ankles and the knees and the hips and the back. I was like, okay, cool. So if you feel that that's the case, those are all joints, right? So what I want you to do is I want you to go to the top of the staircase. I want you to jump off and land with straight legs. They're all like, whoa, I'm not doing that.
Like, you got great shock absorbers then.
Well, if you want to, if you define yourself, your shock absorbers as being your joints, then that would be your go-to. But what people don't understand, it's actually muscles that are your shock absorbers. That's why you land with a slight bend in your leg.
Yeah.
And so having good shock absorbers requires muscle tone and quality, and that's what weight training gives you. And then how you choose to apply that, whatever sport you apply that to, whether it be biking, swimming, running, whatever, then great. But at least you started with a good foundation.
Absolutely. It's what I've told, like, say, hockey players, for example, that come from other teams, or the coaches make them do dry land year round, and they're doing, like, they just do everything with their lower half. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, concussions, and how many shoulder injuries have you had in the last 2 seasons? Like, oh, I get concussed about every other game. And I'm like, yeah, you have nothing above your waist.
Right.
I'll spend like a lot of time just doing pull-ups, push-ups, chin-ups, and maybe strengthening the posterior chain a lot more,
Mm-hmm.
and always come back faster, stronger with a reduced injury rate. Period.
Isn't it amazing?
Entire season with the rugby guys, just doing for 3 months was just developing posterior chain, better hips, and stronger upper back and a core. That's it. Nothing magic.
It's funny you say that, because I had this conversation with one guy, and he said, "Okay, so what you're saying is that I should be weight training, so I should be just doing legs, right?" I was like, "Okay, have you ever seen anyone run with a perfectly stiff upper body?" And he's like, "Well, no." It's like, "Well, the whole thing works together." Yeah. So
You don't see sprinters running like this, do you? Their arms are moving.
a cartoon if you could do that. So yes, I should
I like
certainly do.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's interesting, people, and that's the definition of holistic health care.
Yeah.
Looking at the whole thing, and not just your little segmental pieces.
Yeah. And that's where people get caught. Like, I heard a really good quote, and I'll try and remember it. I was reading it from a book years ago, and it was like, you can get strong and you can be like not very healthy, but you'll get to a point where you just kind of like cap out. And they thought, and the quote went something like, strength and health and strength are correlated and they will never be broken.
Yes.
And it was something, it went on a little bit, but that was the main point of it. And I was like, man, that's actually profoundly intelligent.
Yeah. Yeah. And simple too.
Like most things.
Like
Simple.
most, yes. Seems to be the right one.
Yeah. Usually your grandmother was right.
If you don't believe me, just ask her.
Literally. So I got another weird one for you, and we spoke about it briefly before we started this. How do you feel your practice is going to change post this whole coronavirus thing?
Oh man, the question of the day. So, coronavirus is a generational event. So it'll be something that all of us remember where we were and when it happened and who was affected. And the way that Alberta is tracking, like they're still predicting by the end of the summer, we're going to have up to 800,000 confirmed cases. So coronavirus is here. It's not going away, and we're not going to have a vaccine in 3 months.
Yeah.
And so my profession, much like yours, the foundational principles are close contact touching. And there's really nothing worse that you can do to somebody right now.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of fear in our profession about how we come back from it. But what I'm noticing is that people are contacting us. They've been at home for a month. They've been sitting around at the kitchen table trying to work for a month, and they're hurting. And so they need us.
Yeah.
And so I actually think that we're going to come back pretty strong. I think it'll take some time, but it'll be about creating what our place in the new normal is. So COVID's not going away, and nor should we. So my big my plan, or the things that we're strategizing now provincially and at the office, is like, how do we create a psychological comfort for the patient and for the practitioner, that they're in a place that feels safe for them? And we always have created that. It's a safe place that you get treated and share your medical history, etc. But now how do we breathe the same air safely? And so there will have to be some changes made that take into mind some distancing recommendations and sanitization processes, which we've always been ahead of that. So those aren't big changes for us. So the physical space itself works, and the physical contact with the patients will work. We just have to figure out, to create psychological comfort, and then create enough barrier and screening processes to make sure that we don't have COVID cases coming in and then be able to be a site of transmission. Because as a healthcare provider, the last thing that I want to have happen is that one of my patients contracts COVID at our clinic and then spreads it to their family. Like, that would be awful.
That'd be horrible. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I understand completely. That's my world.
Yeah, you get it. So, to your point, I don't know the answer to that one just yet, and we're formulating it. But I know that when COVID first hit Alberta, 4 weeks ago, sorry, when the lockdown sort of started, the panic was so high, and everybody's watching
for days,
refreshing Twitter, like, what are they saying now? And now everybody's sort of like, it's spring. I'm going to go for a walk. Like, we're starting to relax a little bit. And so I think that'll occur within our professional businesses as well, is that people are just going to understand that this is the new normal. And I feel like I'm taking the precautions that I need to take, and the people that I'm doing business with are taking the precautions that they need to take. Therefore, this is as safe as it's going to get. And life's got to go on. So I think the business will be fine. We just have to be sensitive that we have to allow people to get to that point too.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, I think there's going to be like a lot of small changes, for lack of a better term, instead of like big monster changes, because you can't just, like, our professions, like you have to be hands-on with people.
Yeah.
You can't adjust someone from 3 feet across the room or 6 feet away.
Right.
I can coach from 6, 8 feet away, but when you have someone that's brand new, they may not understand how to get in position. So you have to actually manipulate them in position.
Yes.
So I think it's going to be a lot of small changes. I think for me, it's going to be a lot of like different types of cueing and just saying, okay, can you sit down there and do this? Be a little bit different in that sense. But yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. My biggest curiosity is the psychological trauma coming out of all of this. I'm already hearing stories of people like saying, like, I don't think I can go outside again.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty crazy when you think about that. Like, so I think you're going to see some people that, like, you can't ever lock me in a room again. I can't handle it. And then you're going to see other people that won't leave that room.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be really like the psychological trauma coming into this and the mental health issues coming into this are going to be very, very interesting.
And I agree with you. And I think that, as much as it'll be about how we do things in the new normal, it's going to be about how we say, like, communication is going to be really key. Again, like we talked about, is creating that safe place.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think people just, the psychological trauma that will come out of this will be significant. And I think that your business and my business are actually well suited because people feel better with our services.
Yeah.
So there's a big psychological component to what we do.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a marketing thing. Like, that's just the reality of why people actually contract our services. And so I think we need to be comfortable with the idea that people are into our offices and our gyms to feel better. And that's important. That's an important part of the rehab.
Yeah. Back in the day, I used to make the joke, like, I used to be a bartender, and I said, when I changed my profession, people were like, well, why'd you change? I was like, well, I used to make people and put them at their worst. Now I get to try and take people to take them to their best. So it's a huge different mindset.
180 right there.
Oh, very, very different. So Brado, I got a couple questions about prehab tips because there's so many home workouts going on, and I can't imagine how many burpees have been done in the last 4 weeks globally. I legit would not want to know the number on that. Yeah. So knowing what we know, it's probably going to be shoulders, low backs, and knees that we're going to be dealing with for the next little bit.
Yep.
Do you have tips for anybody to help save those issues right now?
Yeah, this is a question that I've actually been answering for years with people working from home.
Yeah.
And a couple angles to it, so it'll be a little bit of a longer answer, but people right now are sitting at their kitchen table on their laptops.
Oh yeah.
And that wasn't a good idea after work. It's certainly not a good idea for work and after work now.
Yeah, no.
The ergonomic principles generally have gone out of the window right now with people being at home. And we've all become more sedentary because this thing happened during bad weather. Like, thank goodness spring has finally sprung, but all of us have been cooped up inside in a curled up seated position for the entire day. So everything gets tight and sore. And then we get these home workouts. We're like, gosh, I really need to do something. I'm going to do a whole bunch of burpees, which is a ton of hip flexion, right? Shoulder pressing. And You think we were bad for warm up and stretching beforehand when coach was watching? Nobody's doing it. So
Warm up's the first 10 burpees.
I know, right? Yeah, there's a built-in warm up.
Yeah.
So my advice on the prehab side of things is make sure you're getting up and moving around as much as you can. Even if it's to walk around the apartment, or is it right now, walk outside, walk around the yard for a bit and get yourself moving. Do some stretching at least once or twice a day. And it doesn't need to be a half-hour program. Just get into a position that feels tight and just sit there for 30 seconds. The other thing too is try and have variety with that stretching. So we as home athletes now, we're self-coached to some degree, is we tend to stretch the things we're good at and the things that we like, and we neglect all the things that we're terrible at. That's what coach was for, but he's not there now, so I'm not going to do it.
Nope.
So it's about having some pre-planning, some forethought around. Monday is arm day, getting back to those days, and Tuesday is chest day, and Wednesday is low back day, but not around the strengthening aspect. Those are the mobility aspects I'm going to work on. So you get in there and actually do some stretching for a specific area. And when you reduce your stretching session down to something more specific, like a single area, you'll become more creative about how you stretch it, because you got to justify that time. And stretching is one of those things that it can be done wrong, but it's also really difficult to get it wrong.
Yeah.
So if you spend a little time in an area and find places that are tight and you devote 10 or 15 minutes a day to it, which is not a significant amount of time for us right now, you're going to be better off, because through the course of the week, 5 days, you've stretched everything. Whereas before, 3 days of that week, you stretched the same thing 3 times.
Yeah. It's definitely the whole pick on what you don't like to do.
Yeah.
Like, and I've started doing more cardio in this time. My God. I'm going for a run today.
That's a muscle we haven't stretched in a while, hey? Cardio muscle?
I hate running so much. So much. But it's nice out and I don't want to be inside, so I'm gonna go out and run, I guess.
That's it. Yeah, so that's my big thing is just you have to be very prescriptive and deliberate about your rehab.
Yeah. Do you think there's gonna be like, how do I explain it? How do I ask this question? Do you think there's gonna be like one overall particular area you're gonna see like the most trouble with?
I agree with you. I think there's going to be a lot of low back and hip problems.
Yeah, I think so.
And there's going to be a lot of neck and shoulder issues because everybody's punched their keyboards. But I also think that there's going to be an influx. So people ask me, like, what's my busiest time of the year? And I always thought it'd be like ski season or biking season or whatever. You know what it is, man? It's gardening.
Yep.
And people being in these sedentary positions for a long period of time, number one, or they're getting out of their winter hibernation, they're pulling on roots and they're digging with shovels, and their bodies haven't been prepared for that kind of load. So the injuries that I actually see are related to people that have been kind of dormant and then they've become active. So as the restrictions are lifted by the province, I think what you're going to see is people getting injured from being active again from a long period of inactivity.
Yeah. It was always funny at the previous gym I worked at, I had 2 big seasons because I did a lot of rehab there, rehab coaching and training there. It was always February because we had a lot of squash at our club, and every New Year, without fail,
Yeah.
join the competitive squash league again, and they haven't done it in 10 years, and they just dive right back into competition. And week 3, 4, like, oh, my Achilles tendons are really sore. My knees are. I was like, maybe you should just like stop for a couple days and build a few things up. And I legitimately remember my last probably year there, I had 2 girls walk up to me, and they're both complaining of Achilles tendon pain. And I'm like, let me guess, playing squash? And they're like, yep. Competitive? Yep. I was like, when's the last time you played? Oh, not long ago, like 10, 15 years. And I was like, okay, I would stop now. I mean, and they argued with me, and I was like, okay, you can do what you want. I'm just telling you, here's what's going to happen within the next 4 to 6 weeks. One of you or both of you are tearing an Achilles tendon. I said, I'll put money on it now. I see it. By March, I'd seen 6 every year forever. And without fail, 3 weeks later, one of them tore an Achilles tendon. It sucks.
It's a super uplifting intake that you just got there.
It sucks, but it's so, like, it's just hard to watch because I've seen it so often. And the next time I got busy was always September.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone was gardening and doing outdoor boot camps. And the only thing you do in outdoor boot camps, push-ups, burpees, running.
Yeah.
Push-ups, burpees, running.
Don't
Because
forget the lunges.
buy a sled to pull something.
No, for sure. Yeah, no, I think that's going to be the big thing. So like I mentioned, I think that we're going to have a pretty strong resurgence as long as we can have that, we can build some of that psychological comfort back in.
Yeah, yeah. That it's going to be. I think, like you said, I think you guys will be fine. Like our profession probably surge, just because people that have gone through this will be like, wow, like I made it through like one of the worst times in human history, and I could probably be in better shape for a few things, or I could probably approach it a little bit differently the next time. So I'm thinking you'll see people start to actually kind of go, I need to be fitter to do stuff because it has to be the way it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about positioning, and you have to be ready for it. And again, the human condition is, if someone doesn't feel safe, they're not going to show up.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now, there's one question I always ask everybody. You read a lot of books, Brad?
I do.
What are you currently reading?
Currently, I'm actually rereading is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a.
Yeah, love that book.
Yeah, that's a, for this time and age, that's a great book.
That's a fantastic book for right now.
And I'm actually reading a book by Robert Holden. That's it's actually his research is about happiness, the study of happiness, and how you can actually control your happiness. And I think it's an interesting read. It's kind of a neat take on things, but it's going to be important for people on the mental health side to be able to take control, because there's going to be a lot of resources that are stretched in other ways. Yeah. And so I'm reading that book, and it's kind of interesting.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I'm guessing he's talking a lot about perception.
Yeah, I mean, with any of those books, it's all about perception. I always look for books that provide tools. Yeah. And concepts are cool. Like if it's a brand new concept and it's revolutionary, yeah, I'm all for learning that. But after 18 years in this business, and most of the concepts are the same. If you want to feel happy, you got to choose to feel happy. Yeah. But how do you do that? Yeah. And so that's the trick. And so if you want to be fit, how do you get fit? Well, you have to choose to do that. And then what are your tools?
Yeah. Yeah. I like books that provide tools and insight. I'm a big fan of it. Like right now I'm reading oh yeah, actually, oddly enough.
Oh yes.
Strong, Healthy, and Happy by Bob Hoffman. It was written in 1938. Dude, the stuff he's talking about in this book, it's literally the same stuff we're talking about now.
Sure.
Be more active, eat less crap, choose to be happy. It's really very interesting that almost 100 years ago they were saying the same stuff.
Yeah. Humans have changed, but we haven't.
We haven't changed at all. All right, buddy. That was awesome. I'm sure that we could talk about this stuff all day, but maybe if you ever have time again, we do a part 2 and we go into some other stuff. Who knows?
Love to. Yeah, I'd love to. This is fun. I enjoy it. It's good to see you too.
Yeah. Let me turn this off and I'll just stay on for a second.
Okay.
Let's do this. Stop recording.